guys, welcome back to PS I Love You Episode 2. Today I'll be teaching you a cool trick, manipulating a photo to turn it into a sunset landscape. This tutorial is based on the tutorial by Bunty Bundir, the link to which is in the description below. The photos used are my own. So now to start off, choose your photos. I have this cityscape and the photo of a sunset. In this case, I've got some extra elements at the bottom of the sunset photo, so I'll be cropping these out. Just bring this onto the city background and place the layer underneath. Now we're going to be applying a layer mask. This layer mask will be placed on the city layer. If you'll notice, the layer mask is white. Now we'll be removing parts of the photo by using the paintbrush tool, which will be black. All you need to do is paint over the parts you don't want to show, and voila! Just remember to use the soft brush so that it blends a little more. Also, don't forget to choose the layer mask and not the layer itself, or else you end up with black streaks all over the image. Note that you don't have to make it extremely perfect. It's okay if there are a few imperfections when you're erasing, especially if you want it to blend. But this depends on the type of photo you're using. Just adjust and clean up the image to your liking, and once you're satisfied, add a brightness and contrast layer. In my case, the photo is extremely bright, so to match the light of dusk or sunset, I've lowered the brightness and increased the contrast. Again, paint over the layer mask to remove the parts you don't want to see. Next, we'll be adding a color balance layer. This will make the colors of the city similar to that of the sky. Feel free to experiment with this part because it takes a bit of time to get it just right. But don't worry if it's not completely the same because it's easy to adjust later on. Now we'll be adding the selective color layer. You can use this to adjust all the colors of the photo to make it as realistic as possible. Of course, these settings will depend on the photos you use. You can choose to change the highlights, midtones, and shadows. So there are an infinite number of possible outcomes when using this layer. Once you're done, use the layer mask and remove the sky portion. Again, don't worry if it's not perfect. Sometimes it adds character to your photo. Now we'll be adding a curves layer. But before we edit it, we'll be adjusting the blend mode of some layers. You're free to experiment and check out the different modes and how this will affect your photo. Now the curves layer helps the tonal range of the photo, with the upper right representing the highlights and the lower left representing the shadows. This time I'm using the layer mask to remove the city. But you can leave some parts of it to add more shadows and depth to your work. For this portion, you can play around and experiment with the curve, seeing how it affects your photo. Next, we'll be adding another layer adjustment, the photo filter. This will make the image warmer and replicate the warm hues of the sunset. You don't actually really have to do this, but it does help a little bit if you do. Okay, so next, we'll be adding a gradient map, again, to add shadows. For this gradient, we'll be going from black to brown, and once we have the layer, we'll adjust the opacity so that it will remain subtle. Again, we'll adjust the blend mode. For the colors of the gradient, it really depends on what kind of photo you're using. But generally, you can use the same colors. We'll be adding a second curves layer for the shadows of the buildings. It's okay if it's a little harsh. Now change the white layer mask by choosing the paint bucket tool and coloring it black. Then, change the paintbrush color to white and paint over the areas that you wish to add shadows on. So for this part, we'll actually be doing the opposite of what we were doing earlier. Instead of removing the stuff that we don't want, we'll be painting on the stuff that we do want. For this layer, you could change the blend mode to color burn. Once again, adjust the opacity of the layer so that it's not too obvious. When you're done, clean up your photo and voila! You've created a sunset landscape. Thanks guys for joining me on this episode of PS I Love You, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!